Sir John Templeton is one of the early pioneers of global investing. He founded the Templeton Growth Fund in 1954. It grew into one of the most successful mutual fund groups in international investing. It built its reputation by venturing into uncharted territories and finding bargains that would later reap huge returns. In 1992, he sold his financial empire and devoted himself full-time to philanthropic activities. He has recently written Worldwide Laws of Life, a collection of 200 spiritual principles, and I am pleased to have him on this broadcast, not only to talk about this book, but to talk about a very interesting life and also talk about economics and Wall Street at this time. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Charlie.
Great to have you here.
My pleasure.
Tennessee, Franklin County, as I learned, Winchester, small town. You come out of there and you go to Yale University, where you are Phi Beta Kappa. What brought you to Yale? How did a young man in a small town in Tennessee of about 2,000 people end up in New Haven at Yale?
A plan of my father's went astray. When I came home in the first grade, 7 years old, I had nothing less than A's on my report card, and my father, who had a cotton gin, said, if you'll give me a bale of cotton every time anything is below an A, I'll give you a bale of cotton every time there's nothing below an A.
Yeah.
And so throughout all grammar school and high school, I never got anything below an A.
And you had lots of bales of cotton.
That's right.
And you wanted to go to Yale. You probably had your choice.
I had never seen Yale, but there was a farmer who lived about 10 miles away, and he told me it was the best university on earth, so I wanted to go there.
Not Harvard, not Stanford, not somewhere else,
well,
not Princeton, but Yale.
If I had heard about them, that would have been different. But
right.
He was the one that told me about it, and nobody from my high school had ever taken entrance exams. They'd gone to other colleges, but never entrance exams.
Then you were Phi Beta Kappa.
Yes.
Showing you could compete with the best.
Well, thank you, sir, kindly.
Then you got a Rhodes Scholarship.
Yes.
And you went away to England.
Yes.
And became an Anglophile.
Yes, in a way, yes. I'm a worldphile, really.
Yeah. What did that experience at Oxford do for you?
It opened my mind. I had intended to help people with their investing, but it was clear.
Even then?
At Yale, I had planned to be a foreign missionary.
Right.
But when I met some foreign missionaries, I could see they had a lot of ability I didn't have. So I had to search around, but God gave everybody some abilities.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the parents of my wealthy friends were doing the most stupid things with their investments. I decided that I could do that. I could help. So I majored in economics at Yale, intended to major in business management at Oxford. But when I got up to Oxford, they said, what do you want to read? I said, business management. They said, why would any Oxford gentleman want to read business? And they wouldn't let me. So I'd take a degree in law as preparation for business. But anyway, to answer your question, that experience, the 2 years there, with plenty of money for the first time in my life and an opportunity to travel, showed me that the Americans were missing the world market. And so I determined to become an expert in helping Americans invest in all over the world.
We're talking about the latter part of the 30s, aren't we? Around 35, 6, 7?
I went up to Yale in 1930, to Oxford in 34, and came down in 36.
Yeah, and then in 37 came back to the United States?
No.
No?
No.
Stayed overseas?
Oh, Charlie, it's a long story. I determined I wanted to help Americans to invest all over the world. So I said, I haven't seen much of the world yet, but I had saved up at Oxford from playing poker 90 pounds. 90 pounds.
Pretty good poker player.
And so I spent 7 months, went through 35 countries and spent only 90 pounds in order to learn how the differences between all the different peoples and how they operate. So it was a whole year before I came back, married my fiancée, and went to New York.
Did you know then what you now preach, the gospel of emerging markets, the gospel of investing overseas? Was that, are you saying, the best initial investment idea you had, that there was money to be made beyond America's boundaries?
No, no. To be successful in investing, you have to keep changing your ideas all the time, more than once a year. The main idea I had back then was that in England, people invested worldwide.
Right.
But in America, they invested 95% in America. And I was going to show them how to invest worldwide.
Came back and started your own company?
No. Well, before coming back, I wrote to the only people who had investment counsel firms in America. There were only 85 on earth. And 12 of them offered me interviews, 3 of them offered me jobs. The one I took turned out to be Merrill Lynch. But then my wife and I decided we'd save 50 cents out of every dollar we earned with the idea of forming our own company. So 4 years later, we formed our own company.
And that was called what, the Templeton Fund, or what?
Called Templeton Investment Management.
And you began when to make a lot of money? When did you begin to show the genius that has led you to where you are today? Was it easy early for you?
Oh, no. Everybody has to work hard or should work hard. I was never been bright. I just industrious, I guess is the right word for it.
You were Phi Beta Kappa at Yale, and you were a Rhodes Scholar, but you've never been bright.
No, that's correct. That's right. But I've been hard working all the time. Still now, I work hard now at 84.
You say now that you work harder than you ever have in your life before. You're working 7 days a week, you say.
That's correct. I'm the busiest I've ever been, the most enthusiastic I've ever been, most joyful I've ever been, because some of these charity programs are beginning to have a beneficial effect.
I want to get to those, I promise. Okay, but let's stay with the notion of your economic activity.
All right.
World War II came.
Yes.
What did you do during the war?
I already had children, and so I never got drafted, and I stayed in New York and built an investment counsel firm.
Right. And then after the war, in which the great American time came, we were the most powerful country in the world, and it was a post-war, and Europe was rebuilding, and Japan was rebuilding. Where did you begin to spend most of your clients' money?
Oh, all over the world. The real opportunity in those days was Japan, because Japan was just desperately cheap. You could buy things there for 1/10 the price you could buy them in America. And yet, having visited in Japan after Oxford, I knew that it had a great future. So we invested more and more wherever we could find bargains. One of our basic principles, Charlie, in investing is to buy wherever things are the lowest price. And you can only get things at a low price if somebody's selling. Nothing else pushes your share down except other people selling. So people were selling in Japan after the Second World War, and the bargains were there, and we loaded up on them.
There's a great story about you, and I just sort of remember it in the back recesses of my mind, where you called up a broker somewhere and said, buy everything on the market.
No, but almost, Charlie.
Almost. And the guy comes back and he says, I bought everything for you, a small number of shares, and all these companies, except those that were bankrupt. Correct. And you called back and said, buy them too?
Yes, right. Correct, Charlie. Gee, you're well informed. When I got my first job after coming back from Oxford, it was with a company that later turned out to be Merrill Lynch, and I worked for a man there named Dick Platt. Right. And then later when I had my own company, Hitler invaded Poland. Right. Well, it was clear, if ever the companies that are worthless and are losing money ever come back to life, it's during a major world war. So a couple of days after Hitler invaded Poland, I looked over all the New York Stock Exchange and the American Stock Exchange. There were 104 companies whose prices had gone down below $1 a share. And so I called up Dick Platt and said, buy me $100 worth of everything below $1 a share. And he did what you just said. He called back and said, we're doing it, but 37 of them are in bankruptcy. And I said, oh, no, those are the best of all. The one outstanding one, Charlie, was the $7 preferred stock of Missouri Pacific Railway. It had gotten down to 12 cents a share. Yeah. It hadn't paid dividends in years, but boy, railroads come back in a war. So we bought 800 shares for $100, and when it got up to 40 times what I paid for it, I sold out and went up to 105.
My goodness. Now, when you have, during this period of economic growth and period of the success of Templeton Investments, the philosophy was always to buy bargains.
That's right.
How did you determine bargains?
The lowest in relation to many factors, but the biggest factor is earnings. How low is it in relation to earnings? How low in relation to growth trend? How low in relation to dividends? How low in relation to book value? How low in relation to competitors?
So you would look at comparative numbers, and if most of the companies were selling at 20 times earnings, and you found one that you thought had some quality was selling at 10 times earnings, you'd buy that one.
Yes, well, the differences were much greater than that.
You mean 5 times versus 25 times. Today, you retired in 1992. You, in a sense, didn't retire, but you moved over your focus of interest and you sold.
No, I got smart, Charlie.
What happened?
Because all my life I was trying to help people get wealthy, and with a little success. But I never noticed it made them any happier. but I wanted to help people to become happier. And that real wealth is not in money, it's in spiritual growth. And I wanted to grow myself spiritually and help other people to grow.
But had you been a religious person throughout your life? Because
yes.
you had once wanted to be a missionary. So those principles
Yes, definitely.
that had guided you. Now, are some of those principles the same kind of laws of life that we see in this book today?
Correct. That's just what it is.
Like what?
Like it's more blessed to give than to receive. Getting some money makes people look happy temporarily, but as a general rule, it doesn't benefit many people. But to be a giver, to be really helping people, gives you permanent joy. So that's one of the rules in there. It's more blessed to give than to receive, or in other words, lasting happiness does not come from getting but from giving.
I think it was, and help me on the numbers here, when did you establish the Templeton Prize?
25 years ago, Prince Philip just awarded the 25th prize in Westminster Abbey.
Okay, I won't talk about the recipient of that prize, but you established in 1972.
Yes.
You give the prize, a committee of distinguished worldwide citizens select a winner each year who does what?
Something new. This is not a prize for religion. Many people think so. It's a prize for progress in religion. I was inspired by Alfred Nobel. His prize is for progress in chemistry and medicine and physics. It caused a lot of progress. But he didn't say a word about the most important thing, which is progress in spiritual information.
So you wanted to fill that void.
That's correct.
And you decided to gain attention, or at least to give it some attention. You would give more than the Nobel Prize. You would make it monetarily more valuable than the Nobel Prize.
In order to say that it's more important. Of course, I had the advantage. He was dead at the time I started, and also he gave 5 prizes, and I only gave 1.
Mother Teresa has been a recipient.
Yes, indeed.
Billy Graham has been a
Yes.
recipient, and many others. Who is the recipient this year, and why was he selected?
Here's a good example. What we're trying to show is that progress, new things, should be done, will be done in all religions. So here's a man that I personally never heard of 3 years ago. But his elder brother, Atavali,
Yes.
and he has 100,000 villages now in India following his way of life, which is a part of the Hindu religion. The most remarkable thing, the reason I think the 9 judges, who come always from all 5 major religions, selected him, is because it's the only major religion we know of who has no officers. They have no priests, they have no elders, they have nothing. He himself has no title. Furthermore, it's an only religion who says, why do you need money? He says, if you live your religion, your home will go better, your business will go better, your government will go better, everything will go better if you just live your religion. Why do you want money? So he doesn't even have a bank account, neither does the movement.
And he does good for people by doing what? He helps them...
By showing them that they should memorize and live by the Hindu scriptures, particularly the Bhagavad Gita.
Your religion is what?
A Presbyterian all my life.
You became a citizen of the Bahamas.
All my life, my wife and I saved 50 cents out of every dollar we earned with the idea that we didn't want to live all our life in New York. And at the end of that time, we could afford to move. We looked over everywhere and went and found that there are more advantages at the Lyford Key Club in the Bahamas than any other place.
Why was that?
For a long list of reasons.
Okay.
Your audience wouldn't be interested. But
Mainly convenience, I guess, in part.
No, it's the centrality of it, the English language, the background of the people, and many things. But anyway, it was the best place in the Bahamas. Well, we were still young. So I said, well, if we're going to spend all of our life here, going to have no other home in the world except here, we want to participate. We want to help the nation. So I went to the British governor at that time, it's a British colony, and said, I want to take part. I want to help you. And he said, well, you'd have to be a citizen. So he made me a citizen within a couple of days after I arrived. And at that time, the United States wouldn't allow it, so I lost my American citizenship. But that's fine. I knew I would lose it.
Yeah, but wasn't that a hard decision for you?
Sure.
I mean, you're someone
yes.
who grew up in America.
I love
you have
America.
done well in America. You love America.
Oh, sure.
You look to America as a great nation.
Oh, yes. I love it very much, yes. And all my family's still in America.
And yet, by accepting a naturalized citizenship from the governor of the Bahamas, you had to give up your American citizenship. I would think that would be enormously painful.
Well, it was, but I had no alternative. Either that or I was going to live in a country the rest of my life that I was not a citizen of.
Some cynic is watching you now and saying he did it for tax reasons. There's some other reason he did it.
No, definitely not for tax reasons. the taxes are higher now than they were then, because America takes 30 cents out of every dollar before you get it from America. Britain takes 35 cents. And then you have to pay the Bahamian taxes, which take 50% higher fraction of the national income than they take in America. So you pay double taxes. It's a mistake to think it's a tax saving.
All right. And you'd rather live there than live in New York for all the reasons that made the decision significant at the time.
I think that's true.
All right. Your own spirituality, you know, what do you hope, because you're dedicating an enormous amount of money annually to philanthropic activity, of which I think they're primarily within the sphere of religion, yes?
50%.
50% in religion. Because you believe that the world needs to get more in touch with values and with religious values and with a sense of what? Spirituality.
All you say is true, but it's a tiny part.
Okay, help me understand.
Let's put it this, keep it simple. 3 of my children are medical doctors. My grandfather was a medical doctor. But my children know 100 times as much about your body as my grandfather knew.
Right.
Why? Because all that 140 years, doctors were rewarded for when discovering germs or anything else. They became famous and wealthy because of that. But in no major religion has that ever been the case. In any major religion, like my church, when I was chairman of a Presbyterian seminary, there was no teacher who would speak out with something really original because it would harm his career. And I thought that was a pity. If you're not looking for something new, you won't find anything new. And so my effort is to change the minds of all religions to make them welcome new things.
And you also, I assume, based on what you just said, you believe in spiritual healing.
Oh, yes.
You believe that prayer,
yes,
a belief in God,
yes,
whoever your God is,
yes,
can influence the body's healing from injury, disease.
Absolutely, Charlie, but don't use the word belief. Belief is one of those words that causes you to close your mind. Just let's say that there is excellent scientific evidence that prayer heals people.
What's the best evidence other than anecdotal evidence?
There hasn't been very much. And so last December, we put up most of the money for Harvard University to make a study on it. And
last year, you gave a lot of money to Harvard to make a study of the benefit of spiritual healing.
That's
or
right.
How
the possibility
of spiritual healing.
Yeah. But there have been other studies. There was the Dr. Bird study in California, where they made a very scientific study of people who were prayed for and people who prayed themselves and how it turned out. But that's just the beginning.
Have you had personal experience that makes you a convert to the idea of spiritual healing?
Yes, of course. Prayers have been marvelous for me and for other people. But that's anecdotal evidence, as you say. You can't convince a skeptic on that. You have to have scientific evidence.
All right, now here, suppose while you were still running the Templeton empire, there was the smartest investment strategist that you had ever met. And he said to you, Sir John, I admire you for your principles. I don't share them.
Oh,
I admire you for your religious beliefs. I don't share them. I am an agnostic.
Sure.
Because I don't believe in God, because I can't find evidence of God.
That's right.
And I hope it doesn't bother you, but I can't buy into your spiritual beliefs.
Some of the most brilliant people on earth have said that.
What does that say to you?
It says they're using the wrong word for God. The people have said that to me in most cases were imagining God as some old man out yonder.
Yeah. And what do you imagine God as?
Let's put it this way. I think the proper way to define God is that there is nothing else. The question is not, is God exist, but is all else merely tiny, temporary manifestations of God? Let's say that, let's try to translate God.
Good.
Translate God into the creative, purposeful, unlimited reality, only reality. Now, on that basis, even those scientists you're talking about will say, oh, yes, there is an ultimate reality, and it is creative, and it is purposeful. We'll call it God.
In other words, so you have given the name God to whatever it is that, in a sense, represents the best of
Well, not
men
the
and
best,
women.
but the only reality.
The only reality. So you can't explain everything, but there has to be some direction, some purpose, some maker.
That's right. Correct.
And for you, it has to be a God because you can find no other explanation.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So coming at it almost from there's no other explanation,
Well,
and spirituality seems to give meaning to life,
yeah.
and it has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well, make it better.
Well, all right. I don't think anybody, any scientist would agree that there is such a word as reality.
Right.
And so do you really think that what you see is the only reality? That would be like a clam claiming that there was nothing, that the ocean didn't exist because he couldn't see it or touch it. So the reality is vastly more extensive and more eternal than human beings have yet seen. And that reality has to have some name. I don't say it's the only name for God, but it's a good way to explain that God is not some old man out yonder.
I assume most interviews you do, people are primarily interested in terms of what you think about the stock market and what you think about the direction of the economy.
Amazing how interested in that.
And where you think the new opportunities are. And I have sort of spent most of my time so far finding out who you are and what you believe in to try to understand what makes you tick.
Yes, Charlie.
So having come that far, talk to me today about the reality of Wall Street today, a Dow Jones average, reaching levels that I bet you never imagined this early in this decade.
That's correct, Charlie, yeah. It's a blessing.
I heard you once say that it was a 50-50 chance that it would reach 6,000 by the year 2000.
That's right, correct. That was on Wall Street Week.
And you
they
were
got
wrong.
that too soon.
Templeton was wrong.
Right, often.
All right, but go ahead. Tell me where you think. Go
At
ahead.
least 1/3 of the time, all my investments have been wrong. But
so where do you think we're going? And where do you think, for example, that there's too much irrational exuberance in the market? Do you think that inflation is around the corner? Do you think that wise men and women are looking at their equity portfolio and they should be thinking about it's time to sell?
bear in mind now, for 5 years, I've had absolutely nothing to do with any fund that carries the Templeton name.
You're not there day to day listening to 1,000 words of advice.
We built what Wall Street calls a Chinese wall. I have no idea what they're doing. They don't know what I'm doing in order to prevent conflicts. So
you're looking to a higher authority.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. But I'm out of the field.
All right, I understand.
But I can give you a helpful answer, I believe, and that is, people don't realize we are living in the most glorious, rapidly progressive period in all history, including investments. For example, there are more people in America now who own shares than ever owned shares in the whole world until as recently as 50 years ago. And that's a blessing. And also, the output per person in America is now 100 times what it was in the Revolutionary War, per person. We don't realize that. I'm publishing a book in December on this called Is Progress Speeding Up? Are multiplying multitudes of blessings because people aren't grateful for their blessing.
Well, clearly it is.
What?
Progress is speeding up.
Oh, yes.
But clearly it is.
Yes.
Couple of questions. If you had your life to live over, what would you do different?
Oh, goodness. Lots of things.
Would you have gone into the investment
mistakes.
business and made all the money you did, or would you have spent more of your time or earlier chosen to focus on spirituality and these issues that so resonate in your soul?
Oh, yes. Yes, I waited much too long. But I do think everybody's given some talents by God, and I was given more talents, apparently, in selecting investments than other areas. So I probably did what God built me to do. But I sure wish I had started far, far younger to concentrate on the important things in life, which is spiritual growth.
Yeah. Why do people come to that conclusion so late?
Because we're stupid. We're human.
Do you have a favorite law of life in this book? I'm sure you do.
No, I don't. Right.
No. So what is interesting about this is based on weeks. It's how many weeks in total? It's 20 weeks in total. No, it's not 20. This says week 26, week 34.
It's 200.
With 200.
200 days, actually, not weeks.
200 eternal spiritual principles.
Right.
Sir John Templeton also has done a significant amount of his funds and his resources going now, as we've talked about in this broadcast, into the world of spirituality and the world of spiritual healing. He once set down some investment principles, lessons from the philosophy of John Templeton: bargain hunting, diversification, economic awareness, flexibility, patience, analytical research, extensive networking, positive thinking, simplicity, prayer. Who has been the one person who's had the most influence on you? Influence. Either because they wrote something, because they were a friend, or because they...
Of course, I've always been an enthusiastic Christian, so that's obvious.
Right. So God and Jesus. And
yeah, but if you get out of the field of religion, I suppose it was Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin had simple principles, which I studied as a child, and they were very beneficial. And so if you just gives me one thing.
Please.
One of my good friends, who's president of Notre Dame University, Father Ted Hesburgh,
right.
yeah.
Friend of mine.
On the cover of the previous issue of this book, he said, "This reminds me of Benjamin Franklin's almanac, only this is much better."
Now, were you also a friend of Norman Vincent Peale?
Yes.
You were?
Very much.
Okay.
Great admirer.
John Marks Templeton, Worldwide Laws of Life. Sir John Templeton has made a mark in the world of investments, and his name is known throughout the world, and companies that bear his name, which he sold in 1992. We thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. See you then.